Outnumbered. I'm Emily Campagno here with my co-host Harris Faulkner, and also joining us today, Fox Business anchor and host of American Dream Home on Fox Business, Cheryl Casoni, host of the Kennedy Saves the World podcast, Birthday Girl Kennedy, and Fox News contributor and former White House press secretary, Ari Fleischer. Now we begin with a defund the police Democrat from Minnesota who seems to be changing her attitude towards law enforcement after being violently attacked. Minnesota became the epicenter of the defund the police movement back in the summer of 2020, following in the wake of George Floyd's death. But while protests and riots rocked the city of Minneapolis, state Democrats were busy echoing calls to defund and even dismantle the police. Now, one of those loud voices was Shivanthi Sathanandan, a high-ranking official within the state's Democratic Party. Just days after George Floyd's death, she wrote on social media, quote, "We are going to dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department." Say it with me. Dismantle the Minneapolis Police Department. Sadly, this week, Sathanandan was violently carjacked by a group of 4 men. The attack left her with a broken leg, deep wounds, and bloodied face. And it all happened in her own driveway and in front of her 2 small children. She posted this bloody selfie on social media, adding, quote, "Catch these young people who are running wild, creating chaos across our city. Hold them in custody and prosecute them. Period. Look at my face. Remember me when you are thinking about supporting letting juveniles and young people out of custody to roam our streets instead of holding them accountable for their actions. Thank you to the incredible Minneapolis 4th Precinct officers." Ari, such a change of heart, and understandably, but it's a little too late for so many people that already gave their lives and already suffered violent attacks.
Well, first, my heart goes out to Shivanthi. I mean, you look at the picture, you look at what she went through, what her children are going to go through. All you can do is feel tremendous sympathy. But honestly, why does it have to be about you before you can go out and protect others? Did it have to be about you being a victim of crime to realize that this happens throughout society all the time and that you can't dismantle the police? It's those calls to dismantle the police that have led police to resign in droves, which is the core of the problem. We don't have enough police because nobody wants to be a cop anymore. So God bless her. I hope her recovery is swift, but she reaped what she sowed.
Really appreciate Ari's point, Harris, about her making it about herself, because there were a lot of victims from that first moment of her calling for dismantling the police and defunding, like Oscar Lee Stewart Jr., who is also a father of children who died in a terrible arson fire. We're still waiting for charges to be filed. Where were her calls to think of his face? So when she says, "Remember my face," I'm sorry, but there's a whole lot of other faces that I think of when I think of the catastrophe that she helped create in her city.
Yeah, you know, part of what we're seeing is just the shock of what she is, and it takes a lot for somebody to break the bone in your leg. I mean, that's one of the biggest in your body. So I understand that she's having a shock reaction. What I think is really lost on a wider public, though, is that enough to move anything? Because she may reflexively go right back to where she was. Those were long-held, political views that she had. And this obviously is traumatic, what's happened to her. And like Ari said, we're very sorry about this, just as a public. Our hearts go out. At the same time, because 2 things can be true, it's going to take more than a change of heart for this one person to change the system that's been put in place by guys like George Soros, pouring money into changing our society, such as the victims become basically the bad guys in the scenario and the criminals get all the breaks. Yeah. It's going to take more than that. So I don't even really want to put too much more on her shoulders. She's got a lot of healing to do. Her kids do too. Trauma is going to be spread in that family because they were witnesses. But what about all those people that came before and after her toxic words about people who protect and serve?
Kennedy, that's why I can't stomach what she's saying now, because the reality behind her message is that her life matters more, that her wounds mattered more than a long line of victims and deaths before her, because all of a sudden when it's her, then she changes her mind. And we're not talking about something nuanced or complicated. It's actually been quite simple the whole time. People need protection, especially those in vulnerable neighborhoods, and yet that fell on deaf ears to this ideologue for far too long.
Yeah, and it's interesting because she sounds like a very conservative Republican in her latest post. And I'm with Ari. Like, I don't want to see anyone harmed, especially a mom in front of her kids. I can't imagine a more vulnerable position. But to her past self, I want to say, like, you were warned about this. Like, there was a way of having criminal justice reform, getting rid of bad cops, and supporting the good ones who want to keep communities safe. But those good cops have been kneecapped by those awful DAs that you are talking about, and their campaigns have been funded by various Soros organizations. And the mayors who don't have the backbones to stand up to these DAs and create a balance and safety in a civil society. This is what society looks like when it starts to fall apart. And I'm very sad for her that it took this, but there were so many Cassandras in the chorus who were warning, if you defund the police, if you make this blanket statement, this edict, then a very vulnerable part of society will fall apart even faster. And shame on you for not having the rational capacity to have the foresight when you were saying those words in 2020.
And she went on to say, Cheryl, these men knew what they were doing. I have no doubt they have done this before, yet they are still on our streets, killing mothers, giving babies psychological trauma that a lifetime of therapy cannot erase, with no hesitation and no remorse. I'm now part of the statistic. I wasn't silent when I fought these men to save my life and my babies, and I won't be silent now. We need to get illegal guns off of our streets, catch these young people who are running wild, creating chaos, and hold them in custody and prosecute them, period.
It's horrible what happened to her, but it's happened to other people here in this city in particular. And it's one thing to say defund the police until you need the police. And we've seen that play out many times over and over here in New York City. In particular, Mayor Adams is finally coming around to the fact that, I mean, he was always protecting the police as best he could, but now the people in the Bronx, the Queens, parts of the Upper West Side that are suffering under the crime and the rotating door of criminals in and out, which is what she's talking about now. She's saying we need to get, these people need to be arrested and put in jail, not arrested and let out of jail in 20 minutes. So progressive policies sound good on a sign, they look good maybe on a website, but when reality sets in, as we have seen in the streets of New York, and remember George Floyd, those protests, that was 2020. This is 2023, and a lot has changed.
You know, she sounds so much in that last quote like the old Joe Biden when he talked about super predators. And remember, you're not allowed to talk about that anymore unless you're a victim of a crime, and then you know it's the facts.
Wow, and you've got this Democratic mayor here talking